come back to a shin box. What we're going to do is work on some mat navigation. To negotiate the mat in an efficient manner, let's first start on taking this shin box and swinging our leg. The beginning exercise, we're going to do that close to the mat. This leg is going to come long. Now what happens is, if this elbow is pinched in, this cylinder, I'm giving you this angle first, this cylinder is very compact, right here. If this comes around, switching the shin box, we're in our base. From here to base. Here to base. We're going to come right down into this position, sewing together some of our previous skills. Let's go through this by details. What we're going to do, 45-degree on the feet, 45-degree downward, long leg, reverse, elbow pinched, short cylinder, switch the shin box, base. I'm going to go the opposite direction just to accentuate this. Bring the elbow to the knee, expand the hip downward. This is going to be your motion. Here, you need to pop the pelvis and roll the shoulder down to the mat. If you try and keep your, like a Lincoln log, how many of you have gotten stuck here with 200 pounds on top of you, or more? Shoulder has to come down to the mat, leg long. Now, just for the purpose of this exercise, we'll do a rising shin box, or a rising shin roll to come up. Same thing in reverse. Decline, cylinder, shin box, switch, base, rising roll. And work this throughout your training regimen of movement softly. Keep nice and fluid so that you can transition. Your transitionary movement capabilities are what sew your techniques together, regardless of your grappling style. Another perspective on this. You need this to be a soft transition, but your leg has to pump. It has to reach long so it loads the pelvis. Long. The longer it loads, the easier the transition is going to be to come upward. I'll give you another perspective. Shoulder to the mat. Load the leg and up. One more time. Shoulder to the mat. Shin box switch. Shoulder to the mat and up. Variation on the exercise. We went from this long leg roll. We're going to switch this to a high leg roll. I'm going to give you a couple different perspectives. The first is, from here, keep this tight. What we're going to do is shift the pelvis to the ground first. Here. Leg across. Just at the knees. Keep your knees to your chest. Knees to your chest. Now work this exercise. One side and down the other. Most important aspect is going to be that all of the torque comes from this motion here. at the knee. The elevation and depression of your femoral joint and the looseness and suppleness of your knee. At the end of the tape, what you're going to see is some athletes composing these exercises and putting them together in a fluid sequence. They'll be improvising them like you should. But right now we're going to move on to a different exercise. This exercise, I've heard from grapplers the next day in training that this has revolutionized some of their movement patterns. It's called leg threading. When we work from this base, this cylinder, if you need to get to a prone position or from a prone to a supinate position, you need to decrease the size of your cylinder. If you roll like a log, all of that room, you're not going to have what another player. Efficient movement is going to be decreasing the size of the cylinder so that you can roll in place. And from a prone position, to a supinate. Okay, by details, leg threading. Why? Here's the needle hole. This has to go through. Now, you cannot do this if your hips are tight. You won't be able to. It's got to be dependent on your relaxation level. Second thing, those of you have trouble raising your shoulders, your arms above your head, this is going to be a serious detriment. Work on your flexibility and your range of motion. Work on it. It's going to be integral to the technical content of your game. Take this arm high, thread the leg through. Bring your elbow out, slide the opposite arm to this position. Opposite direction. Bring around, take your elbow to your knee and come through. Once again, arm high, leg thread, face down, face up. It can be that fluid if you relax. Now, traveling, you can negotiate the ground fluidly if you increase the range of motion in your joints. Like I said, later on, you'll see some sportsmen demonstrating this in simple compositions and complex compositions, but it'll give you a better idea. We'll change the environment, and it'll give you a better feel of how movement is affected by contour. Some of you aged folk will remember the break dancing days. I'm much too young to remember that, so you know. One of the main components of dance moves is efficient biomechanical movement. Now, you're going to see a lot of dance-like elements, especially breakdance elements, and one of the histories of Russian style is a martial tradition, which in translated into English was breakdown happy dance. Who knows? Might have been one of the progenitors of breakdancing in the modern era. However, taking this exercise, what we'll work on is working from this base. We're going to have a bit of a complex shin box switch. Leg comes long, switches the shin box. Leg long, switches the shin box. If you try and come here, stretch submission, you'll be doing it to yourself. How many tears and pulls do we see from this position? Switch the shin box, allow the pelvis to roll. As you get more and more comfortable with it, some of you are already familiar with this component. Shin box. Shin box. It should become really fluid. You should start composing the previous exercises together and start to connect into it your technique base. Now you'll see what happens if the pelvis or the lunar plexus needs to be mobile. You need to stabilize the solar plexus and free the lunar plexus. this becomes a point of rotation on the ground. You can't do this. Don't lock both centers of gravity to the mat. Just one. If this one's locked, this one's free. If this one's locked, the solar plexus is locked, the pelvis is free. Now obviously you can see, we're back to here. You can start to compose these together. And once you have this little melody of movement, you can see how this is going to increase your performance dramatically. Now, when we take this exercise and we add into it the previous of threading, leg threading, leg swoop, big one, ground. Shin box, 45-degree shoulder roll. Free the lunar plexus. Now, leg thread, arm high, stomach, opposite side. Work on the simple motor components and start to put them together into complex biomechanical sets. I'll do it a little more fluidly. You can see how, where the dance component that we've seen. Once again, shouldn't be energy expenditure. Should not be expending energy because it's based on inertia, stored elastic energy, relaxation. Throughout the course of your exercises, what you're going to need to do is have the proper respiration to coordinate with your movement. One of the things that you'll hear on our breathing tape of the Roche training system is that respiration happens because of movement. How you move your body determines your respiration. You can't have very deep breaths when you're constricted on yourself. You wouldn't see very many opera singers like this. They need to open up and expand their chest. When you're moving through the course of the exercises, try and coordinate your respiration, or better yet, get yourself a copy of the respiration tape from the Roche training system. The next exercise block, we can call spinal rocks, and the reason is because of the articulation of the spine. When we work from this base, we need to expand the pelvis and drive the body straight upward. Then allow it to collapse in on itself. The most important component is that each vertebrae acts independently and absorbs motion. Each vertebrae at a time. Respiration. Expand it open and drive the pelvis forward. This really gives you a lot of inertia to power up from a prone position, an inverted position, or a seated position, like I am now. Inverted, seated. You drive through it, and it'll connect your techniques, your skill families. Most of the problems you're going to have initially will be with the pelvis. Don't try and launch over top of you. Seat your solar plexus into the ground. Drive this straight into the ground, so you should have a... Open it up. That's the basic position. Next element. What we're going to do is incorporate some ballistic stretches. These are not static stretches, they're dynamic range. Don't fly through them, but keep them in motion. If you want to have flexibility in motion, you've got to stretch in motion. You cannot incorporate static stretches with movement capability. We'll get to one of these elements later. straight up, straight forward. I'll give you a better perspective. Breathe and roll the spine out. Drive the legs straight up. Should be ramrod straight each time. Drive it up because the hip motion, that power that you're going to be generating, may not be even on the ground. It translates in all of your activities, your ability to burst through emotion, that explosiveness. Dynamic stretch once again. This time we're going to take this into what's conventionally called a hurdler stretch, but it's not a static stretch. It's not a static stretch. Leg's going to split at the top. Continue straight down. Box. Straight. The leg that's going backwards is the leg that's contracting. Okay? Now we're going to switch this. The opposite side. This is going to be a little bit of coordination on your own part. Take your time, don't get frustrated. Your ability to perform is an indirect proportion to your frustration level. So relax, relax. Stretching both at the same time. What you want to do is make sure that your objective isn't to travel through an isolated range of motion, but through the range of motion of the joint. Isolated range of motion, hyperextension, hypercontraction, range of motion. Okay? Well, we'll work on details later. Next exercise, legs come out. They're not kicking straight back. They're kicking out at 45-degree angles in a crescent. Now, second component of this exercise, don't forget the angle on those kicks. The second component is this straddle. Now, some of you can sit down completely straddled on your own. But what you want to do is have the power, the elasticity, generating back force from this. So, in motion, stretch in motion. Back, forward. Each time. Relax through the exercise. We're going to combine two exercises. The shin box from earlier and the spinal rock. And what we're going to do is add into it a torso twist. Up. Twist the shin box. One side and the next. Your ability to be self-constricted here is going to be very important when you're inverted underneath an extremely heavy opponent, and your mobility from there and your relaxation level paramount. So, twist, switch, twist, switch, twist, up, twist. Each time. Take each one of these spinal rocks, do them 5, 6, 7 times, combine all of them together, work all of them together as a good warm-up or cool down, or just as a component in addition to your training, as an auxiliary component. Probably one of the most difficult of the spinal rocks is the ability to allow the body to self-contort And this is going to be completely dependent upon your ability to relax. We see a motif forming. When you jet upward, allow your knees to come on either side of your head. If you don't separate your knees, well, you can imagine the consequences. Allow your knees to come directly down on each other. Opposite sides straddling your head. Now what we're going to do is we're going to add a component, allow the knees to be fluid, pull back your toes, and take the balls of your feet and drive them into the mat. And I'll show you first. Do not kick. Do not try and kick out. All you're going to do is stretch out your back. Let your knees come down on either side of your head. Self-contort. Don't try and kick. Up, and allow the knees to drop on either side. First component. Second component. Take your hands, roll your shoulders over, and drive your fists into the mat. This is not punching. You're taking torque from motion and allowing it to slingshot your appendage. When you have the inertia of full bodily movement, you can generate so much more power. Over and down. You can generate a massive amount of power if you coordinate all of your motion together. Okay, you probably saw in the last exercise, if you don't breathe, if you don't have a forceful exhalation, constricting the abdominal wall, you're not going to be able to do that exercise. Your lungs are big balloons, and if they're full, it's going to cause a great deal of compression on your organs, one of them being your diaphragm, and you're not going to be able to breathe. You'll have the wind knocked out of you. It's not exactly an anatomically correct statement, but some of you understand immediately what I mean. Self-constrict. Now when we move on to the next exercise, remember that all of the training should be under the supervision of your coach or under your own common sense. Do not blast through exercises, especially range of motion exercises. Take your time, gain sensitivity to them. In this exercise, what we're going to first work on is neck alignment. Neck alignment is not neck strength. Neck strength happens because of neck alignment. Okay, when your head is aligned directly underneath your spine. Now this is going to have to be important. Some of you wrestlers understand the nature of bridging. This bridge, you need to develop the mechanical advantage of your spinal placement. Two fists, either side of your head. Start pushing your pelvis forward. Until you find a balance point on the very top of your head. Once you find that balance point where you're completely erect, I'll do that a couple times, then screw your arms together. It'll look like you're pressing up, but you're not. You're taking the inertia and screwing your arms together, just like here. Press them. Roll your shoulders forward. Keep the alignment perfect. First, a couple examples of the vertical alignment, then screwing up. First time where it's good to screw up. Work on that a couple times. What we're going to do is we're going to give it from different angles. Make sure that you whoosh, roll your shoulders over and press up from a screw. Later on, some of the exercises is going to be completely obvious. can't press up. Can't press up. You need to take the inertia and power it through screwing.